Hello, everyone, and welcome to Art Therapy Live moment here at Hope and Healing at Home. Today, I thought we would focus in on comics. I was really inspired last week when we were talking about narrative therapy and what story are we telling with our lives and how do we examine that and how do we move forward on the journey and even processing hard things in a fun way using story and collage and image transfers. So that was last week's, and I couldn't get it out of my mind. There was so much more I wanted to share along these lines, and I was trying to figure out what the best way to do that was, and I landed on comics. Graphic novels are really hot in the last couple of years, and I know people use social stories to help teach social skills to kids with different struggles, and it's just a really fun way to explore different parts of our life and take things a step further with identifying coping skills and ways we could change the outcome. Things that we could have done different in an effort to identify things we can try to develop in our lives moving forward so that our story can keep changing. We don't keep repeating the same patterns that we have. If we look at these are incredibly well done, obviously, professionally done. And they have speech bubbles and they have kind of narrative boxes and lots of things depicted visually and with words, so it's nice that you can combine those. I'm not seeing it in here, but other comics that I've seen, and one of the things that I have found super useful in my work with clients is the thought bubbles. I think those are incredibly powerful in working towards a better understanding of perspective, how others are being affected by what we do and say, and how we are affected emotionally as well by what they do and say. You could actually take comics and just talk through those and add details with people, or see what comics or what graphic novels they're really resonating with and enjoying lately. You could create your own comics a couple different ways. You could start off with a prompt. You could take an image from a magazine and start that off and develop the different boxes and develop the storyline off of that image, or you could move the image over and figure out what happened before and what happened after. And that has been really helpful. This what happened just before, what happened just after, what happened, could we separate these two boxes, and is there one that goes between box 1 and box 3, or separate it from 4, and is there a 3A and then 4? That has been super helpful with a lot of my clients, trying to figure out the before and after type thing. So you could use magazine images. You could cut a different magazine image out to represent each box of the story that they're trying to tell or the situation you're trying to process. If somebody doesn't really want to do all the drawing, or you could take them and you could add details, add yourself in, add your friends in, and see how they would react and interact with the story being told. Another thing would be if you have Post-it notes on hand, or if you just want to tear up some paper that you have on hand. The nice thing about using the smaller sizes also with this is it's a small size. It's less intimidating to a lot of people to have only a small piece of paper to have to fill up. Doing it on separate pieces of paper, like a cut up or torn up piece of paper, or if you use Post-it notes, allows you to keep rearranging this story. You can go several different ways, like I just said, different ways of putting the image together, and it can be as simple as drawing stick figures. Allow yourself or whoever's doing the comics to go at their comfort level. Very often I have clients come in and they're like, this thing happened. Well, technically their parents or their teachers will call me and say there was a situation and we really need to address it and examine it. And they've, of course, already gotten in trouble, I'm sure. Or they come in and they talk about a situation with a sibling that they want to see change. So I'm not using an actual example from any of my clients, but let's say they come in and there was a fight at school. So maybe the actual incident are these two kids and there's all these others maybe standing around, right? So they'll draw the actual incident, what actually happened, and maybe somebody got hit in the face and there's like blood dripping. Maybe they got hit in the nose and there's blood dripping. So you can always add color. I'm just going to use pen right now for ease of doing this. standing on the ground, somebody hits somebody, and the other one's like, oh my goodness. So that's where you can start adding some of the details, the thoughts that are going on in each person's head, even the crowd's head. You can also, at the same time, there's those word bubbles of what's actually being said. There's action or sound effect kind of blurbs that you can put in there. So maybe those tend to be more jaggedy. Maybe this is pow. And maybe they're feeling ouch. And they're feeling anger. So as you can see, these spaces get very, very tiny. So you can't put a lot in there in one specific thing. And that's one of the benefits of doing these comics, is that it is condensed, because the thing is, a story, a whole situation might feel like it happens in an instant, but it really doesn't. And so with the comics, you can begin expanding the story. What happened next? What happened just before? You might actually go into this one scene and say, let's zoom into the different pieces of this story. So you got the crowd, right? You can do those however you want. And what are they saying? Maybe there's the jeering crowd. You can talk about what it feels like to have this audience, is there peer pressure? You could talk about, are they actually making comments? Are they closing the circle in tight so that you feel like you can't escape? Maybe so there's this bubble thought here from one of the people, and they're thinking, no, escape. And you can think of like they're closing this circle in. So that's what I'm kind of thinking might be happening with the crowd. And so then maybe that comes down to this person here. And actually, maybe that thought is being had by both people, the one doing the hitting and the one being hit. Right? Who knows? It could be both. And that would create a whole dialogue about how these two people are actually similar in why they continue to stay close and why they're fighting. Maybe we want to go into what has gone on for this person ahead of this moment, of why they've chosen to do the punching. And so maybe that harkens back to maybe something happened in class, and the teacher picked that person for something that this person really wanted to do in the class, and so they're mad at them. Or maybe the teacher was, I don't know, I'm going to separate them by a desk. I'm not sure why, but that's what I'm going to do today. Maybe the teacher picked this person for something that this person had wanted to do. Or maybe the teacher was, how can I draw a scolding finger? One finger. Like scolding this person. And they're saying, tisk, tisk, tisk. Like, you're in trouble. Like, how do we represent you're in trouble with the word she was saying? And they're embarrassed. And maybe it was because this person told on them or something. Who knows? But that kind of flushes out the before, because this moment here didn't happen randomly. So part of the comics is really helpful because it can start really diving into what happened before. And then obviously you're going to need one. So the nice thing about a pad of Post-it notes is you can just keep adding. You don't have to keep cutting them up. And you could do this on a full sheet of paper if you wanted, but comics tend to be very small. And I really do like tearing each piece up to start with, because you can keep arranging the story. Here's the teacher and the big whistle saying, no more, you need to stop. So this is, I don't know, how do I do the sound for a whistle? I'll do shriek. So that's when the whole thing, maybe the teacher's running. What's going on? There's a big crowd. So maybe that's what they're thinking. Oh no. Maybe that's what the teacher's thinking. Need to help. Need to stop. So even the teacher can have like some thoughts, the playground teacher. And this is what they're seeing are these two kids. Not sure who's doing what, right? And these two are doing the sound effects. Pow, bang, right? Make up your own sound effects, add color to these if you want. So then that happens, right? And then what comes next, right? Could be the principal's office. Maybe we just have a sign on the door. Maybe there's not actually an image. Maybe this one is very much just the words, the list of what happened there. This is parents called, no more recess, need to say sorry. All these things might be, and you might have like speech bubbles for each of these things. And obviously you can see how this story can just keep going. You can keep saying like, well, what happened next? What happened next? And on the other side, what happened before? What happened before? And you can even then start to go, well, what happened between? And that's where it's really fun. That's where it's really powerful then to come in and go, where could this story have changed? Could it have changed in the principal's office? And how could it have done? And do a whole picture about what could have gone differently in the principal's office to bring the next step, to have this next piece look different. And maybe that's after the principal's office, maybe it goes to counseling. Maybe they came straight here from the counseling office or to home. And you're like, okay, we just had this big talk. Now we're here. How are we going to change this image so that it feels better? What can we do in one of these two places to make this image look differently than what we fear it's going to look like? Could we have done something different here when we felt like the crowd was creating no escape? What would have happened if we felt that and then walked away? What would it have taken to walk away? What could that have changed about these following images? And then you can do a whole nother image of what the alternatives. This is what did happen, but if I had done this, and then you tape these, you move these around the desk, or you move them around the floor and keep rearranging, keep trying to insert, well, what if I had done something different in class? What if I would have responded differently? Would that have changed this image? And then you can do another picture. You can have them lay on top of each other, so you could do like a flip book, or you could have it so that you could turn it. Then you can pick the scenario that did happen and the scenario that you want to happen in the future, and you can tape those down on a piece of paper so it's all in one place. So that's another idea of using the comic strips. I've had several kids come in, and I just give them a piece of paper and I ask them to tell a story, and they instantly go to the comic strip and they draw their squares and they start filling them in. And when it's already on the piece, then we will take like an arrow and draw what could we have done differently there. What coping skill could we have put in there? And then we draw the new storyline of how that might have changed it. So all this thinking of comic strips, of telling stories, also got me thinking of the Rorschach test and the Thematic Apperception Test. Have you guys heard of those? So the Thematic Apperception Test is often referred to as the TAT test. And what you do there is there's a group of cards that you pull out and you ask the client to tell a story. And I think that's what's powerful about collage, using magazine images for yourself. You can gain a lot of insight as to how you interpret a story. So you take a magazine image and you can glue it in your journal and write the story. That can just give you a ton of insight into yourself. What do I read into, and why do I read that into the story? Why do I think that's the storyline that's going to follow? Why do I think this is the thought the creature or the person in the image is having? If you're using it in like a therapeutic setting or to gain some insight and build a connection with your child, also really helpful. And you go, I wonder why they chose that picture. I wonder, did they look at the picture? Did they ask if they could move it around? Did they ask for your input on the story? Did they keep looking at you to see what you're thinking of the story as you record it for them? a couple different things to look at. And then the Rorschach is the ink blot test. Oh, I had one other thing I wanted to say about that. It was inspired by Moby Dick. And the Rorschach is credited with being inspired by some poems that somebody actually wrote about an accidental ink blot. And interestingly enough, the actual Rorschach test was hand drawn. Those weren't just random blots of ink on a piece of paper, or the way I do it. I don't do this as the Rorschach, but this is just kind of fun. You put paint on your paper. It's just a fun activity. Don't worry about what it's actually looking like over here, but if you got some paints around that you just want to use up, this can be just a fun activity to see what happens. You only put it on half of the paper, then you fold it over, and you can, if you rub it this way, the paint's going to smear a little bit that way. If you rub it this way, it's going to smear this way. And depending on how much you rub it, that's going to smush the paint even more. So you can see through this thin paper a little bit how things are moving, and if there's something you want to try to alter. But you don't have a ton of control, but it's kind of fun to see how that happens. And then you open it up to the surprise of what's in there, and you see what you see. You can spin it and see different things. And you have your own little homemade Rorschach to be an inspiration to a story or a poem or a conversation with someone. So I hope these ideas were helpful. I've got things written out a little bit more in detail in the newsletter that you can get at hopeandhealingathome.com. You can sign up. Lots of good links, really excellent articles. And also, thinking about this some more in these tests, I remembered another live that I want to do with all of you is the trauma drawing series. So I've gone to a couple different countries with a professor of mine, and we've trained other therapists in that. And this will not be like an official training. I just wanted to introduce you to this way of using stories, of breaking things down, of slowing the moment down. It's very similar to sort of the comic strip idea, but it's really focused in on how to process trauma. We've got good guests coming up. The Reflecting Light Women's Conference is also coming up very soon in July, so check that out. I am doing an art journaling session about identity. So I hope you enjoyed these ideas, comic strips, using magazines, the TAT test, trauma drawing series coming up, different ways to use art and comics in breaking down situations that you want to learn more about. You want to help people look at how are others affected in the story? How can I change the story? All this inspired by narrative therapy. I hope you guys have a great Wednesday. Let me know if there's things that you'd like to see me cover in one of these lives and in more detail in the newsletter. Thanks so much.